Welcome to the Walled Garden Podcast, the flagship podcast of the Walled Garden Philosophical Society. Here we tend to the gardens of our minds, one meaningful conversation at a time. To learn more, go to thewalledgarden.com. But for now, enjoy this episode. Well, friends, welcome to the Walled Garden Podcast. Here, live in studio, all the way on the other side of the world, upside down, Rocco Jarman.
Speaking to you from the future.
Yeah, man. As you always are, even if you weren't. Man, I cannot wait for 2 weeks from now. It's going to be fantastic.
Getting close.
Yeah. And for those listening, you know, there's no specific format to this particular episode, but since I invited Rocco to come over here to America, he's been really sitting with a lot of interesting and profound ideas around the theme for this celebration weekend, and I just wanted to kind of spend a little bit of time today just letting him kind of talk about what's been coming up. And so Rocco, I don't know, you've shared some things off the recording with me that have been really speaking to you. Are you pumped?
Yeah, I'm getting really excited because I don't know if you recall, but my whole life practice follows like a kind of lunar cycle. So I'm in a very, very, let's call the dark ebb, but I don't mean dark as in a depressive or a negative way. I mean, you know, that if I can throw some imagery at it, the womb of night, the rich dark place where kind of mystery percolates up from, and that's the kind of space I'm in now. Which is, if you think about it, that's where seeding happens for new growth. That's where, even if it's composting and dissolution, it's it sounds on the outside like a kind of death or like a kind of retreat, but it's actually seminal and so necessary to rebirth or regeneration or regrowth. And it's of course very, very exciting. I don't know if you remember, we really do need to give it some more airtime, the idea of the hearth and the well. Do you remember that cycle? Is when you get to the point where your cup is almost overfull, you can't feed the fire anymore, you can't actually coax it into warmth. The best thing to do is to actually back away and let it die, let it lie fallow, the way farmers do, you know. I think, what did we say last week? The mountain to the climber is clearer when he stands in the valley, that kind of thing. So that's what I'm going through at the moment, all the while ideating in a very different space to what I do maybe when I'm on the other end of that arc, which is a lot more sort of more of me in the room. You know, this is more like where you let something else in the subconscious take more of the steering wheel. So that's the space that I'm in leading up to this. And of course, when we get together, it's going to not only be full moon, in other words, the top of that arc for me, like the fruiting arc where all of this fruit comes to bear. It's going to be this poignant moment called a blood moon where it's the equivalent of a lunar eclipse, you know, where the shadow of the earth, just think about this in allegorical or metaphoric terms, the shadow of the earth is casting its umbra over the moon, the reflected light of the sun, you know, the reflection. And all we get to see is this dark red image visited back at us, which is almost again like a mirror of something. And we're going to explore what that something is when we get together. And I think it's interesting. It's rich in metaphor and symbolism. It's a beautiful natural arc, and it's a rare moment in the skies. And I think it's also a rare moment in the world that we're going to be sharing together. So yeah, am I pumped? In a way, pumped is the wrong word, but I shall be pumped. You know,
bro, are you pumped right now?
Yeah,
that's what I should have said. But no, man, let me say I am pumped. Quite, specifically. And you know, I've been inviting as many people as I can. Every second that I have free the past few days, and I'm definitely getting behind with my invitations, and I'm like running out of time, but I'm just reconnecting with just the wonderful people who have come through this space in the past year, people who have been really
Wow.
a part of everything. And just, you know, this whole idea of reclaim your magic, I think, is so perfect for the weekend. You even just then, as you're talking about your excitement for it, you're bringing in the lunar eclipse and the hearth and the well, this symbolic language.
Yes.
I think that's one of the things I'm most excited about when it comes to introducing you to my community over here of artists and creatives and just people who are supporting this space. Is you just so seriously and profoundly like live in that space where everything means something.
Yes.
And honestly, I mean, like, those are probably the only kinds of people who I really like, really enjoy working with. And a lot of artists in the area as well, I feel, are very connected to that way of living. And I was in here in the studio last night with Leah and Kevin, two phenomenal musicians and people who are now teaching out of this space.
Lovely.
And we are so excited for this, and so excited for you to be here and for Sharon to be here. And I just said to them, you know, what we're starting here and what is blossoming now is a community where we actually get to welcome others into a really rich, profound experience. And I believe, and I said this last night, I really think that artists and creatives, philosophers, are like guardians of soul in this time, where I feel like soul is just being sucked out of everything, and people are becoming cows to the fodder, and we're just being farmed for our souls every single day. And this is a space where we invite people into it and say, no. Like, I want your soul, but I want it. I want to see it. I want to know it. I want you to express yourself. I want you to experience other people expressing the beauty of their souls.
Yes.
And man, you're just going to be such a huge part of, like, the fact that you're here for this 1 year anniversary.
Yes.
I can't believe it. It's so profound.
Yes. And in the background, what I'm actually going through is I'm following the work of a guy called Bill Plotkin. And he's got a book, he's got several, but this one that I'm reading is called The Journey of Soul Initiation. And it's this very opposite, as you know, I'm a student and teacher of hermetics and high philosophy, and that can be, you almost want to draw yourself a natural polarity. And I use that symbol of the tree a lot. Like, you know, philosophy for me is very much the upper branches reaching towards the sky, towards the light, transcendent, of the nature of fire, of the nature of air, reaching up. And, you know, that was probably my core project for so long. And I had done some of the other work, what I would call shadow work, you know, this grounding work. But through the work of people like James Hillman and Michael Mead and now Bill Plotkin, I'm finding better language to describe this other important volition, this necessary thing that we all have to tend in ourselves to begin with, as well as the community, is not growing up towards the divine or towards the golden ideal or towards these virtuous pinnacles that philosophy helps us define, but it's actually growing down deeper into the world, into the roots of this place. You know, that Rumi quote, wherever you stand, be the soul of that place. And the idea is, you know, half the project, sure, can be about that ascent, but what is the worth or the meaning of that ascent of climbing the mountain if there's not a verdant, a welcoming valley to come back to? Yeah, and it's actually the valley that defines the mountain. You know, if you look at a horizon, what does a peak mean if there's not the opposite side of that zigzag digging down towards the earth? And what we're missing in all of us is the nature of the roots of a tree are integration and connection and belonging, sort of a thing. And gosh, what would the point of anything be if we were chasing only that high-minded philosophy without that groundedness, you know? So people are going through waves of awakening right now. You were talking about the dystopian nature of what's happening, and it used to be kind of a casual byproduct of an extractive, the spirit of empire. It eventually became capitalism, and eventually became how we do democracy, how we run religions, how we practice science. Even everything is done under the rubric of business, the spirit of business. And the sort of what we lost during that ascent was incidental, casual, but it's almost like there's this white line fever that's arrived in the power brokers and the billionaires and the oligarch mentality of the world, that they realize that there's this one little bit of spark that they need to stamp out, this one bit of vitality and agency that they need to crush in the world. And it's shifted from being this accidental byproduct of that orgy of growth and extraction to almost becoming clinically, or I don't know if it's ironically coincidental, but it's starting to feel deliberate, you know. Yeah. And the only thing to do, of course, is to respond in exactly the opposite way. It's to stop thinking about what we can do, what we can extract, the brand we can build online, the way we can put ourselves up in lights. You know, there's very much of the mythos of Los Angeles is I've come here to be a star. And it's, you mentioned that Harold Thurman quote quite a bit, the one that says, stop asking what the world needs and figure out what it is that makes you come alive, because what the world needs is people who have come alive. But in that, there's also a bit of old JFK in there. Ask not what the place can do for you, and start asking what you can also do for the place. But beautifully, soul doesn't ask you to do one or the other. We're not looking for martyrs here. We're looking for tenders of the gardeners, of this beautiful place and this space that we stand in. And so it's a two-way thing. We don't need someone to give everything of themselves, but we need to connect with the prudence and the importance and the necessity of also that giving. It's become a time of discerning giving and discerning taking. I don't want to ramble on too long, but if you think about the way the internet is at the moment and the way AI is going, it's not about good or bad, right or wrong. We've got to get past this binary thinking. It's all about discernment. What are we letting in? What are we taking on? What are we giving out and letting go of without our say-so? And there's a lot of ways to lead that conversation. And I think philosophy is one part of it, but the other part is this curation of culture and of meaning making and artistry and creativity. And it's a faculty we each need to reawaken inside of us, so that we can find the way that we are called to be a gift in the world, so that we can start becoming part of the regenerative conversation that is so desperately overdue. Yeah.
Oh man, I love it. This is exactly why I think it's so necessary that you come over here and spend this weekend with us, man, because it's just, and this is why from the start I've said, listen, I'm going to be aiming at, selling out this place, having a full house and everything. But
yes,
but at the end of the day, no matter what happens, to have had you here on that day, to have had Sharon here, for you both to see and experience what's happening here, and to start to get to know some of the people here. And I think it's beautiful what you say about initiation and actually digging deeper. I wanted to share a little analogy that I think actually really fits well with that. I mean, firstly, I feel like that's what I've tried to do with this space as it relates to the walled garden. To have somewhere where we are, right, and somewhere where we're trying to not only just talk philosophy, but put it into practice in the world.
Yes.
And really invite people into that physical space as well. But I was going to say, when I'm teaching singing, it's funny. I think there's a good analogy here, because sometimes when you're singing, you can think like, okay, all the powers, it's like all coming from up here, you know, like it's in my throat, right? It's coming through my mouth, right? It's like, it's up here. No, what I try to share with people is like, it has to be like a full body experience. So you actually start with your feet and you get really grounded, and I tell kids, like, plant yourself, right?
Yes.
And then what I want you to do is you've got to actually feel your glute muscles, tense them up. Watch what happens. Whoa, your back gets straight. It realigns your whole body. Wow. And then when you're breathing, breathe as if into your belly. Big breath, right? Like and really like a diaphragmatic breathing, right?
Yes.
And then once you can feel yourself planted, once you've connected with your glute muscles, connected with your abdominal muscles, you get that breath. The power that can come through is unlike anything you could do.
And the resonance,
just thinking also, from it up here. That's it.
The resonance also, yes. I must just give you and the listeners a heads up any minute. A little rainbow becostumed blondie is going to come tearing in here for attention on the camera and for cuddles. She's going off to school and it's book week, so she's dressed up as Sparkleton the unicorn. It's actually quite nice because her school sent out a letter to say, please, parents, don't go to the costume shop. Please put together something from home. We want all the kids. There should be no barrier to entry for their imaginative expression.
Yeah.
We're recording now, so you can say big
hello,
smiles
Maya.
and wave to Uncle Simon.
Wow.
Sprinkling.
Why is he sprinkling?
Rocco, I thought Maya was going to be coming in, but all I see is a unicorn, and I'm really confused right now.
This is actually Maya.
No.
Yes,
no way.
Why is he sprinkling?
Why is he sprinkly? Oh, the camera's just not working well between us, but the computer program will fix it. Now you run along. I love you. See you next time. See you later. Sorry, not sorry.
No, it's super cute. It works.
You were talking about that process of whatever a conversation you're trying to have through your art. Let that conversation begin and be grounded in the body. And what you've stumbled into there beautifully is the spirit of yoga, the philosophy of yoga. It's this idea that our bodies are also echo chambers, resonance chambers, roots, these instruments actually. And the whole point of why I teach what I teach is to just ignore all of the silos and borders and boundaries that anybody has taught before, because these things become too parochial, too provincial, too siloed. And really what we need like an unfettered, untrammeled access to all of these gems that have come through from every single domain of learning and culture and meaning making in the world. We've got we are so incredibly empowered. We've got such a great heritage. We should be able to access all of it. And there's a thing that David White says. He says you should try this yourself. It's quite remarkable. When you're speaking, when you invite somebody on stage to talk, just look in your mind's eye, you'll see what I'm saying. They sometimes go onto stage and they're, of course, anxious and nervous and they're thinking about things too much. And so everything they're saying comes right up into the top of their head, and there's nothing that they can say that can sound terribly interesting. You almost shut down inside. But it's when you sink down, right down into the body, and you actually speak from as low a place as you can inhabit comfortably, sometimes even uncomfortably. Suddenly, your message is so much more resonant with myth and with power, and you start speaking a kind of truth that you don't have to edit. Yeah? And that's exactly what you were talking about. You know, you could hear that change exactly as I spoke, and it's actually a practice, it's a discipline, and it's part of the conversation, excuse me, of reclaiming your magic. That is part of your magic. It's a simple magic. It's a magic of inhabiting and arriving fully in your body, because your body is this wonderful instrument and channel of something that's trying to come through you, again, that you don't have to edit and author. You just simply are the thing. But how could that possibly happen if you haven't arrived and are not settled deep in the body? And there's practices, very simple ones, that I've alluded to right here, that you can do to change everything, And when you add that into the performance craft of an artist, because the nice thing about artists is they natively understand this idea of performance craft. It's not disingenuousness. It's this wonderful idea that says authenticity has to be practiced. It sounds so counterintuitive. If it's authentic, why should I have to practice it? Well, you actually have to practice deprogramming and letting go all of the encumbrances, all of the story, the narrative, all of the mental framing, the beliefs, the operating system that you walk around with that tells you that you ought to be a certain way. And the reason you practice your authenticity is, of course, to train your nervous system and your psyche of a way of inhabiting that stage and holding court and being the gift. Yeah, there's a few wonderful things I want to talk about if we have the time. But the first one is the performing arts are often, the metaphor of it or the symbol of it is two masks. The one smiling and the one, and it's of course talking about commedia and tragedia, these two, again, the tension of the opposites in life. And that was called a persona. And a persona in Italian literally means the place where the sound can come through, because the shape of the mask of the mouth in that smile or in that curled down grimace was the place persona where the sound could pass through. And it's the mask, what we call a person now, is just kind of a mask that we wear, and how we learn to wear that but still speak the truth through it is like a reflection of our personality. I love that idea that we're actually we're always actors on a stage. There's that famous quote, "The whole world's a stage and we but actors upon it." You picking up what I'm putting down there?
Yeah, I'm picking it up. I used to okay, because I've heard this before, and I always saw persona outside of a performative context. I saw persona as actually this thing that is to be seen, understood, and then to break through the persona, to actually just be yourself, right? Because people walk around as something that they're absolutely not, but it's this mask that they wear to survive, to deal with trauma, whatever it is, right?
Yes. But you're right. But there's this other aspect to it in which you actually start thinking of, you're now getting into the territory of Zen Buddhism, where it's the taking off of the masks. And then you realize the project of taking off those masks is another mask. Because, because that's when you start bringing the ideas of perfection and how it looks from the outside, and immediately you're thinking about this in a subjective, objective way, and then you realize that even that is a mask, and then eventually you realize the only thing to do is just to stop. But artists are in service of the audience often. They are the kind of artists that are in service of life, in which way they almost don't recognize the audience. They just do what they need to do. But we're not all that. This is a spectrum, right? And most of us see ourselves in a kind of trade with the audience. Our job as performance. I come at this from the perspective of a bard, a traveling storyteller, not always a musician, but somebody who entertains, informs, initiates, uplifts, changes people, right? They go out, they have their wrestles with their demons or with the difficulties of life, or they transmute their troubles, or they encounter new questions and mysteries, and then they process those through their craft, and then they come back into the center of the village or the king's court, and then they deliver that. And then the audience, of course, patronizes them in the best sense of the word to get that magic that they couldn't have gone to fetch for themselves, to get that alchemy of the mystery that's coming through, right? And weaving what's happening now with what happened before, with the questions nobody needs to answer, the things we don't necessarily want to look at. And the bard, the artist, the musician, has this magical capability of shaping that for the audience so that it can be retained, understood at some non-verbal level, appreciated, yeah, which is different to enjoyment. But perhaps also, there's something rich in that exchange. It's ceremonial, yeah. It's a ritual of exchange, and in that we realize that we've got a kind of job to do almost in that. People come for something on the night. You've got to give them that something, but you've got to find a way of giving them that something without selling yourself out. It's got to still be your message, your magic, your something. Yeah. And in that, there is still the idea that the actors are still themselves, but the persona is the instrument that they are tuning. So you can see that there's both now. There's the master craftsman, the real artisan behind that is shaping and refining the instrument, but there's also the one that is playing through us, and sometimes that's a thread of our own genius, and sometimes that's the muse, a something that comes through us, and we have to decide how much of that we're channeling through us. Now, all of this, as the artist in me, is terribly exciting, because you suddenly go, yes, 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 yes. And the trick now becomes, how do I make room for all of that? For the performance, for the tuning of the instrument, the refinement, the crafting of that instrument. That's a thing as well. Then for the iterations of practice that I need to do to discover how I can authentically inhabit this. And then how do I channel my forms of inspiration, my forms of genius? How do I make room for that in a world that doesn't want you to admit of your own genius, that wants you to sound different when you speak about your craft or yourself? And then how do you also make room for this conversation or this gift that wants to come through you? How do you hold all of that, That's the conversation that I want to have. Because I think that's what artists and creators and audiences really care about. It's that there's an intimacy there, internally and between us, and that's where magic can really happen. Is at the tension of opposites,
Yeah,
between
that.
Yeah, go for it.
I just wanted to pick up on one thing. A couple of things actually. I think it's really interesting that you're talking about this this kind of duality where there is authenticity, but also a mask at the same time. There's something we're trying to do, some experience we're trying to create. Leah actually said something quite just interesting last night. She said she has layers of show, right?
Yes.
So sometimes you're just part of the furniture and you're just providing music, right? But sometimes people are watching you and expecting something, so you take it up a notch. But what we were all also discussing last night was sometimes you come across a performer. It's particularly true in jazz when it comes to crooning. Somebody who is trying to be a character of the past. Even sometimes off the stage, they remain in that persona. And it's that kind of fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars.
It's a caricature, yeah.
Exactly,
it's cliche.
And so we were just discussing how like with our mentorship here and everything, we always want to have the focus right on like your soul has to come through in this performance. It's your expression. Don't try to be something else. But still there is a performance happening there. And so there's skills that you bring to it. There's something that you bring to it to make an experience, like you're saying. But it's so easy to get stuck in the persona. And I think it's funny. I'm even thinking back to when we started the Walled Garden. So much of the inspiration from my standpoint for starting something like that was I realized, oh, I'm like painting myself into some corner here by trying to be like the stoic guy, right?
Yes.
And it was so limiting philosophically, so limiting to my mind's expansion and exploration of these ideas. I just said, I can't do that anymore. We have to open the gates a little bit.
Yes. Yes. You know, you can't have authenticity without vulnerability. You know, and the way that I explain it in different contexts is, if you are not loved for who you truly are, you are not really loved. What they want, what they love is the image of you that they keep in their mind, and then you, like so many performers, have to be faithful to that image that they expect, because they don't actually respect the artist, they respect the monkey on the organ. And none of us really want to be that. Look, we all have to, you know, get paid for our supper. We have to dance for our supper sometimes. But the challenge, the pilgrimage of the artist is to find the courage. Sometimes it's like a prodigal son archetype. You want to break free and take this musical and magical inheritance and go and make your fortune in the world. And then you have to come crawling back with your tail between your legs, and you've got to do the shows that pay the bills, c'est la vie. But, you know, my current limits are not my permanent limitations. This is something that can grow and change, and it can only grow and change like yoga again, when I'm leaning into the limits. I encounter the limits. I honor those limits, and then I honor them with this kind of sacred commitment to perhaps no one other than myself, to say, I'm going to defy this limit one day. You know, it's yes for today, but it's not yes forever. And we have to be visible in that way and in that vulnerability. And David White says, to be human is to become visible while carrying what is hidden as a gift to others. That person that is, fly me to the moon, that's just like cranking out a canned persona. There is a quality of human on the internet that finds that perfectly serviceable, that actually comes for that. I don't know how to tend that garden. Yeah. But for the people that come for something sacred and for something special, for something authentic, that's really the only side of magic or craft or art that I care for, or care for that flourishes in the world. The other thing is ubiquitous. That which is ubiquitous is synthetic and has no soul. Nature does not make duplicates, you know, doesn't make copies. And we have to be relatable, of course, to other. And this is the segue I wanted to bring in, because what Leah was saying is I have layers, and you'll recognize that I am a spectrum. There is more than one thing in me. I was talking about that sine curve of the lunar calendar, how I occupy different persona or different aspects of myself. I'm a hierophant, I'm a magician, I'm a teacher, I'm a this and that. And the way to do that, the reason I work with tarot, is because it's a vocabulary of the psyche, which is, of course, archetypes. And when you upgrade that vocabulary, you now have a way to order your thinking and your reasoning and your sense making, and this authenticity can now have spectrum. And it's not just incoherent on borderline psychosis where you kind of lose yourself, you know. Just think of what it does to the human psyche. I know we've got a hard stop coming up, Simon. And just think about what it does to the human psyche to scroll through Reels or Instagram. You get these single serving packets where you're thrown headlong like a fever dream into something that has no context to the previous thing you've just watched. And so you get this rich, highly overproduced glamour. If we want to use magical terminology again, you get this glamour of this perfect vignette, this shiny moment, this perfectly funny thing, this abstract. It's kind of nihilistic, yeah? This meme culture, you just get flashed 17, 20, 100, 150 things. Have you ever had the experience where you dropped your phone or something and you wanted to go back into your feed to find one thing, you actually are amazed at how far you have to scroll. Oh my gosh, I mindlessly went through all of this and this was the one thing that was of value. Now, that's all beside the point. What's happening internally is you're having all of these virtual experiences, but with nothing visceral or experiential or somatic, nothing real to ground this virtual experience in, by which your conscious and your subconscious and your nervous system and the soft animal of your body, etc., can actually process, digest, and integrate this. So you have this absolute scatter kaleidoscope of context and imagery just bombarding you all the time. Now, imagine trying to navigate between the different layers of you, or between the different aspects or the spectrum inside of you, without that necessary archetypal language. That is why people lose a grip on their authenticity, on their sanity, on their mental health and their wellness. And when that goes, your creativity goes. You know, people like to think that Van Gogh was creative, because he was psychotic. You know, his biography will tell you that when he was suffering psychosis, he was not creative. That's sometimes the dark alchemy that we have to process and chew through and transmute. So be it. That's a fact of life at this time. We're in a very dark time. We're in, as Winston Churchill said, a time of consequences. We've entered a time of consequences. But the creative is not generatively creative sometimes in a dark, macabre kind of way. You can see a painting or a piece of music or something and everyone can recognize that. But you can't define a career from that. Also, what an unhappy life that is. So the reason I teach archetypes and why it's so important is because if you want to make room and make space for and become intimate with and be able to fine-tune and refine and allow room for that plenitude, that multiplicity to live inside of you without losing your authenticity, without losing your grip in the world, you need the language to hold that conversation in. And then it becomes an invitation or an opportunity actually for you to start naming that archetype, naming your persona and the character, and getting into framing and frame it for the audience, bring them into the frame, teach them the archetype. You don't have to do it in a verbatim way. You can do it in a creative way. And then suddenly that fidelity of connection is increased in resolution and in depth because we're now all on the same frame. And so much of performance art, of the art of the bard, of magic, etc., is this idea of setting a frame, defining, and then bringing people in. And then once they're in, then the magic happens. And then be mindful also to close the frame in a sacred way or in a distinct way. If you do that, you also bring the best version of yourself, because you only have to be contained for the duration of that frame. And then there's other implications like I'm doing at the moment. I know I'm coming to perform in a way in a few weeks. So I opened a frame some time back and I'm building up. And I'm marshalling my energy and my attention and my awareness and my focus and for that frame, for that big release. It becomes prayerful as well, you know?
It's going to be great.
Yeah, you know.
I'm so excited for this. And
yeah, it's going to be good.
And since I'll be performing on that Saturday night, I'm really glad that we're talking about some of this before it happens, right? Because I'm totally preparing that concert and I want to do exactly this, right? I want to open that frame and just have a magical evening.
That's what the workshop's about, Simon.
Yeah.
On the Sunday as well. Not to punt that, but if people want to know how do I do this? You know, what's the tips and tricks and we're going to work through that on the Sunday, yeah. And then on the Saturday, we're going to be riffing and talking about these ideas of it's so rich, you know. And it's about things we all should be caring about more and more and more.
Well, Rocco, I am sorry that I have to
No,
cut us short. This is a shorter episode today, but we're going to do some more before the big weekend. And all of you who are listening, we gave the invitation in the last episode as well, but I'll give it again. If you're local to the area, if you're interested in coming out for this, you can go to thesanctuarystudio.org/anniversary. And my student's here, so I'm going to run.
Thank you so much. We'll
Thanks,
catch
Rocco.
up soon. I'll
All
send you
right.
the links. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.